This video is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy, proud partners of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thrive is all about player props for the top tier athletes, so you don't have to spend countless hours of research on sleeper players. The more props you win, the more points you receive. Thrive has given away $4 million in cash prizes and has over $140,000 guaranteed in cash prizes for week 1 of the NFL season. Use the promo code JG9 when you sign up to receive a 100% instant first deposit match up to $100. Download the app or go to thrivefantasy.com. Sign up and prop up today. And now, on with our feature presentation. When a player, especially a longtime player, loses his starting job, especially when it's to a player that isn't very good and isn't a young rookie that everyone knows is eventually going to get a chance to play, it can be frustrating. It can lead to blow-ups. It can lead to the player openly lashing out at his coaching staff for not trying as hard. And in some cases, like Jim Hart when he got benched for Neil Lomax, can lead to the player thinking about retirement and quitting the team. And yes, you have some players that say they want to be there to help out their team and still want to win and contribute from the bench, but a lot of the time, that's all talk and no action. This is not one of those instances. This is one of the greatest, most selfless bits of teamwork that you might not have heard of, where a veteran quarterback, after losing his starting spot, did everything he could to make sure that his replacement could do well. And the backup quarterback, despite being on the bench and not being on the field, wound up winning the game because of it. In 1988, Dallas Cowboys quarterback Danny White, despite being relegated to the backup role, did something monumental to help Steve Pelluer that won his team the game. And this is the story behind the selfless act. Before I talk about the act or the play in question, we need some context to understand who Danny White is, why he lost his starting spot, and how everything was going leading up to the event that we're about to watch unfold. White had been in the NFL for a long time. He was drafted by the Cowboys all the way back in 1974, and after some time in the World Football League, got his first action with the team in 1976 as the backup quarterback behind Roger Staubach and as the team's punter. However, after the 1979 season, longtime quarterback Roger Staubach, who had cemented his place in the Hall of Fame by this point, announced his retirement. This meant that after years of waiting for his moment, in 1980, the 28-year-old Danny White was going to get his chance. No longer was he waiting in the wings. He was now the guy. And the end result? Well, while White was no Staubach, he was still an extremely solid quarterback that helped his team win games. This isn't the first time I've talked about White, as I did a video on him a while ago and an incredible touchdown pass he had against the Philadelphia Eagles that was never supposed to happen. So if you want to learn more about that remarkable play, then click the card in the upper right corner. But he proved himself immediately when during that 1980 season, he won 11 games, guided Dallas to the NFC Championship, and finished with 28 touchdown passes, which was the 5th best total in the NFL and was a then franchise record for most touchdown passes in a single season. White made it to the NFC Championship in each of his first 3 seasons as the starter. And while his inability to get over the hump would haunt him for the rest of his career and would cast a shadow on his legacy, he was one of the better quarterbacks in football. He made it to the Pro Bowl in 1982, and even got a few votes for Offensive Player of the Year and MVP. He finished second in the league in touchdown passes in 1983, when he once again broke the franchise record by throwing 29 touchdowns. From the start of his career until the end of the 1986 season, in the 83 games that White started, he won over 71% of them. For some perspective on how great that is, that's a higher winning percentage than Peyton Manning had over his career. And he had more seasons with 20-plus touchdown passes than his predecessor, Roger Staubach. But despite his great career, it could not last forever. Father Time is undefeated. And when 1987 hit, it was looking like his time as a quality starter was coming to an end. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. The 1987 season was rough. For the first time ever as a starting quarterback, White threw more interceptions than touchdowns, throwing 12 touchdowns across 11 games compared to 17 interceptions. His passer rating was 73.2, which was the second lowest of his career since he became the starter. He had trouble staying upright, as he took 44 sacks, which was the most of his career by a fairly comfortable margin. This was a quarterback that only got sacked around 6% of the time over the previous 2 seasons, and in 1987, he was getting sacked on close to 11% of his dropbacks. And for the first real time in his career, the Cowboys were losing, as in his 9 starts, the team went 3-6. It was the first time that White ever finished the season with a losing record as the starter. With White struggling and the team losing, head coach Tom Landry made the difficult decision to bench his longtime starter. After nearly a decade under center, the once reliable Danny White was now riding the bench in favor of Steve Pelluer. Pelluer was drafted by the Cowboys in the 5th round of the 1984 NFL Draft, and he got a significant amount of playing time in 1986 after White broke his throwing wrist and tore some ligaments during a game against the New York Giants. He wasn't particularly good that season, as he went 3-6 while throwing 8 touchdowns and 17 picks. However, Landry was going to roll with him to close out 1987 to see what he had. And to White's credit, He was incredibly supportive of Pelluer. In fact, it seemed at times as though White was actively rooting for Pelluer to get the job, and as though he was happy that he was getting this opportunity. In the penultimate game of the season, which came on Monday Night Football against the Los Angeles Rams, the Cowboys won 29-21, and Pelluer played relatively well, throwing for 183 yards, 1 touchdown and no interceptions, and posting a passer rating of 80.3, which was significantly better than the league average. And White said on Pelluer's performance, "I thought he was perfect." He complimented Pelluer for sticking to the game plan and for fighting through adversity, loving his attitude and the way he approached the game. Pelluer won the starting job in 1988, and White was still there, supporting him every step of the way. And perhaps no game exemplified that more than their Week 4 matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. September 25th, 1988. It's Week 4 of the season, and we have an absolutely big game on our hands between the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys down at Texas Stadium. Both the Falcons and Cowboys sit at 1-2, with the Cowboys' most recent loss being a highly controversial affair against the New York Giants, where the Cowboys lost by 2 points on a safety that never should have been a safety, and led a referee to quit. If you want to learn more about that crazy situation, then click the card in the upper right corner. Whoever wins this game gets to 500 at the quarter pole, still well in the thick of things heading into October. Whoever loses this game, however, drops to 1-3, and with only 5 teams in each conference making it to the postseason, that was going to be a tough hole to climb out of. Of the 10 teams to make the playoffs in 1987, none of them were below 500 after 4 games. In fact, from 1984 to 87, of the 40 playoff teams, none of them were below 500 at the quarter pole. For that reason, this game was monumental, and early on, it seemed like the Cowboys were going to be in complete control. Not even 1 minute into the game, Chris Miller dropped back to pass for Atlanta and got picked off by defensive lineman Danny Noonan, who ran it in for the touchdown. Fun fact, the former first-round pick played 7 seasons in the NFL, and this was the only interception of his entire career, so you're witnessing a small bit of history right here with this play. Tack on a 2-yard touchdown pass from Pelluer to Herschel Walker later in the quarter, and the Cowboys jumped out to an early 14-0 lead. It seemed like everything was going to be going in favor of the Cowboys. However, Atlanta was not going quietly into the night, or I guess day since this was an early kickoff. Because when Atlanta answered on this 68-yard touchdown pass by Chris Miller to Stacey Bailey, the whole momentum of the game flipped. The Falcons scored 20 straight points, with 2 field goals by Greg Davis and a 12-yard touchdown by Miller to Floyd Dixon, his second touchdown pass of the day, giving the Falcons a 20-14 lead in the second half. And it could have easily been worse than that. The drive resulting in the final field goal could have ended with a touchdown, if Miller didn't misconnect on this throw to Ken Wisenhunt. Not sure whether Miller overthrew it or Wisenhunt let it fall through his hands, but either way, this was a bit of a missed opportunity. Eventually, late in the fourth quarter, the Cowboys are down 20-19, with Steve Pelluer and company needing to do something to reclaim the lead and save their season. That's where Danny White, even though no one knew it at the time, was about to save this game. Before I go any further, I want to emphasize this. Tom Landry easily could have gone back to Danny White. Pelluer did not do a whole lot to win the job to the point where White was never going to reclaim it, and where White was resigned to his role as a backup. Entering this game, Pelluer had 3 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. The lone win that Dallas had at this point was against the Cardinals in a game where he had no touchdowns, 1 pick, and a passer rating of 54.5. In other words, the win was in spite of him. He had thrown fourth quarter interceptions in each of the 2 losses. Additionally, the Cowboys were struggling at the gate, as this game against the Falcons only drew 39,702 spectators. This was the second lowest attendance in Texas Stadium history, and team president Tex Schramm said that he didn't blame the fans for not showing up, because the team wasn't that interesting, and Pelluer was subject to lots of booing from the few that did show up. It's very possible that if the Cowboys lost this game and Pelluer couldn't get it done down the stretch, that Landry would have gone back to White, which is what makes what's about to happen all the more remarkable. It's 3rd and 8 on the 29-yard line of Atlanta with under 2 minutes left. A field goal is fine, but a 46-yard kick would be tough, so ideally, the Cowboys would like a first down. That's when Danny White notices something on the sidelines. He noticed something with Atlanta's defensive alignment, and saw the cornerback playing inside. With that, White signaled to Pelluer to switch the play to have Ray Alexander run a corner route. And then, Pelluer, taking White's advice, hit Alexander on a 29-yard touchdown pass to give the Cowboys their first lead of the half. Following a defensive stand, that was the end of the game. The Cowboys had pulled off the come-from-behind victory, and it was all because of Danny White's suggestion. White did not have to do that. He could have said nothing, and no one would have batted an eye. However, he sacrificed his chance at playing again as the starting quarterback and replacing Pelluer to help his team win the game. And Pelluer had nothing but praise for White afterwards, saying that the touchdown pass was all Danny's idea. He said we had run the play before, and the guy was playing it inside. So Danny really noticed that the corner route would be open. It was an incredibly selfless act by White that exemplified how much he cared about his team and how much he wanted his team to win. even if he couldn't be on the field for it. Unfortunately, the rest of the 1988 season would be a bit of a train wreck for everyone involved. The Cowboys would finish the season with an abysmal 3-13 record. It was the fewest wins they had in a season since 1960, when they went 0-11-1 in their very first season. And while there were many reasons why they were so bad that year, one of them was the play of Steve Pelluer, who won just one of his remaining starts. Pelluer finished the 1988 campaign with 17 touchdowns and 19 interceptions. He had the third most interceptions of any quarterback in football, only behind Dan Marino at 23 and Vinny Testaverde, who was in another galaxy with 35. After the 1988 season, Pelluer got traded to the Kansas City Chiefs, where he wouldn't do much of anything until he found himself out of the league after the 1990 season. As for Danny White, he would see some time on the field as the backup for 2 games, playing in a 35-17 loss to Washington in Week 6 and playing the bulk of a 17-7 loss to Chicago in Week 7. However, in that game against the Bears, White suffered a knee injury that would keep him out for the rest of the season. When Jimmy Johnson became the coach of the Cowboys in 1989, he informed White that he would not be a part of the team's plans. And because of this, White decided to retire, ending his remarkable career spanning 13 seasons where he was one of the most consistent winners that the game had ever seen. But despite all of his great performances on the field, and despite all the great plays he had in his career, it might be this moment against the Atlanta Falcons in 1988 that best defines his time in the league, and defines what kind of a teammate White was. Not only did he take the news of the demotion well, even though he was better than Pelluer, and not only did he root for Pelluer and do the things that teammates are supposed to do, but he helped Pelluer win a game from the sidelines. Even though White didn't step onto the field on that September day, he made just about as big of an impact as you can possibly make. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9 and subscribe to 60-second NFL history on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.